This is my comparison between the movie and the book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The novel was written by Ken Kesey in 1962, and the movie was made in 1975, directed by Milos Forman, and stars Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher. Also, Will Sampson is the chief. So there's a lot of similarities between the book and the movie. You can see some of the similarities here. McMurphy's the hero and Ratchet's the villain. The same main events like the fishing trip, the party at the end. Most of the same characters are in there. And the ending's pretty much the same as well. The book, though, the chief's really the main character. There's all those motifs. We learn about the chief's backstory. Cheswick dies. Chief starts talking much earlier. We get more backstories about other characters like Billy Bibbit and a character like George is on the fishing trip. In the movie, it's all about McMurphy. We don't get a lot of the backstories about the characters. Not many motifs. Laughter's kind of in there, but that's about it. The chief talks much later. Chief doesn't go on the fishing trip. Neither does George. Some of the scenes are combined, like the fight in the shower and the argument over the cigarettes. And Cheswick lives. For the purpose of comparison, the most important difference is that although McMurphy is the hero of both versions, the novel is really more about Chief Bromden, while the movie is all about McMurphy. This makes the novel better because of all the motifs that tell more about how the story relates to society. So in the movie, the chief is kind of the same as all the other patients, and the audience only follows McMurphy. But in the book, the chief tells us everything. He gives us the Christian imagery with McMurphy, tells us about the Combine, shows us how the hospital is representative of what's going on in society, etc. If you look at this quote, we can see how the chief associates Nurse Ratched with size and machinery. It's when he first sees her in the book and explains her to us. The fact that she gets bigger shows us how the chief's schizophrenia affects his perceptions as well. In the movie, though, Louise Fletcher does a great job playing Nurse Ratched, but the audience doesn't really get the connection to the Combine and the outside world like the readers do in the novel. It's up to the chief to show us that, and he doesn't narrate the movie. When the chief votes with the men to watch the World Series, the readers see how hard it is for him to do. If you look at this quote there, it takes him a long time to come up to the decision because he knows that it will impact him later on. It will let the nurse know that he is more aware than he lets on, and to him, this vote means going against the Combine, which he hasn't done for a long time. In the movie, the focus is all about McMurphy. The men make a big deal about Chief voting, but we don't see how hard it is for the Chief to vote. Afterwards, all the focus is on McMurphy. Notice that the Chief in this scene is just standing in the background. The audience kind of forgets about the Chief here. It's all about McMurphy versus the nurse, not Chief versus society. Here we can see how the idea of speaking to someone is a huge thing for the Chief. The Combine beat his family, his village, and finally himself down. Now he talks to McMurphy to warn him about the Combine. After McMurphy and the Chief talk, McMurphy promises to make the Chief big again. In the movie, the Chief and McMurphy talk right before they get electroshock therapy. It's a brief conversation that has nothing to do with society. In fact, the Chief only has 3 speaking scenes in the film, and he only talks to McMurphy. The other men don't even realize that he can talk, and there's no connection to society. For the ending, in the film, the Chief escapes, but he doesn't tell us anything about where he's going. In the book, he says, I think I'll go to Canada eventually, but I think I'll stop along the Columbia on the way. He wants to go back to his home and see how the Combine has changed things. So in conclusion, it's a similar story but a different focus. In the book, McMurphy teaches the Chief and all the other men not to fear society. In the movie, it's McMurphy versus Nurse Ratched, and the Chief is much less involved. Therefore, the book has a better connection to society because the Chief is the main character.